That front face is not from this decade. I want to be clear about that before we go any further. Whatever design language you are used to seeing on a motorhome, this concept has already left it behind. The angular aggression, the blue ambient lighting cutting through that pearl-white body, the six-wheel stance. This thing looks like it was designed by someone who was told there were absolutely no rules. Before we get into it, this is an AI-generated concept design. It does not exist in any factory. No one is building it, no one is selling it. It is pure imagination. And that is exactly why it is worth analyzing, because when you remove real-world constraints, you see what design could actually become. Here is what we are doing today. We are walking the exterior first, because there is a roofline decision on this concept that I genuinely need you to see before we talk about anything else. Then we are going deep into the interior logic, reading the space from the outside in. Then powertrain and tech. And then I'm giving you my honest verdict, including one design decision I think they got completely wrong. Stay with me for the interior section specifically. There is one detail I am saving until we get there that I have not seen executed like this on any other concept at this scale. Let's start at the front, because this is where the designer made their biggest statement, and their biggest gamble. The face of this concept is built around a vocabulary that borrows heavily from performance truck design. You have got these deeply sculpted angular intake shapes flanking a central grille block, framed by LED lighting signatures that run in sharp horizontal cuts. The blue accent light is not decorative. It is a brand language decision. It is saying, this vehicle is electric first. Blue has become the visual shorthand for electrification in automotive design, and using it this aggressively on the front face is a deliberate positioning statement. This is not a diesel machine pretending to be modern. It wants you to know what it is before it moves an inch. What does that face communicate at a human level? Authority. This is a vehicle designed to be seen arriving. The width, the planted stance, the way the hood line drops sharply into that grille. It reads closer to a luxury SUV concept than anything you would traditionally park on a campsite. That is entirely intentional. Now move your eye along the side profile and something interesting happens. The aggression of the front face softens. The body transitions into a much cleaner, more architectural language. Long flat panel runs in pearl white with champagne gold accent trim lines that trace the lower body all the way to the rear. That contrast between the muscular front and the refined body is not an accident. It is the design equivalent of someone in a sharp suit who also happens to bench press. The front earns your attention. The side holds it. The paint. Pearl white transitioning to a warm champagne at the accent lines, with that dark gloss black cap on the roof structure. Light moves beautifully across the surface. In direct light, those body panels would shimmer. That is not an accident. Pearl finishes are chosen specifically because they are dynamic. The vehicle looks different at dawn than it does at midday. That is a luxury signal. One last exterior detail before we go inside. And this is the one that made me stop scrolling when I first saw this concept. The entry steps. They are deployed in the image, extending from the side body just aft of the cockpit. The way they integrate into the body shut lines suggests a full retractable mechanism. When closed, this body reads as completely flush. No visible step housing. No awkward protrusion. That level of detail in a concept image usually means the designer has thought seriously about the architecture beneath the skin. Which is exactly why I cannot wait to show you what I think is happening on the inside. We do not have interior renders of this concept. What we do have is enough exterior information to do some serious detective work. And honestly, that is the more interesting exercise. Let me start with the one number that unlocks everything else. Ceiling height. Using the wheel diameter as a scale reference, Those tires look to be in the 22 to 24-inch range, which puts the overall vehicle height at somewhere between 3.8 and 4.2 meters. Subtract the chassis floor height, the subfloor mechanical space, and the roof structure, and you are left with an interior ceiling of approximately 2.1 to 2.3 meters in the main living zone. That is full stand-up height with meaningful clearance. You are not ducking. You are not aware of the ceiling. That changes everything about how a space feels to live in. Now let's divide that habitable length. Based on the exterior, this concept appears to run approximately 12 to 13 meters in total length. The cockpit zone, driver and passenger, occupies the forward 2 meters. That leaves roughly 10 meters of pure living space. Here is how I think the designer most likely organized it. The zone immediately behind the cockpit, the first 2 to 3 meters, is almost certainly a lounge and social area. The window placement on the side supports this. Those large glazed sections are positioned exactly where you would want natural light flooding a seating arrangement. Imagine a curved sofa or two opposing seat banks facing each other, with a low table between them. The view through those tinted windows is private from outside but expansive from within. That is a first-class lounge in a moving vehicle. Behind the lounge, the kitchen. The logic here is circulation. You want the kitchen adjacent to the social space, not separated from it. Based on the body width, which appears to be close to the European maximum of 2.55 meters, the kitchen galley would have meaningful counter depth, probably 600 millimeters of genuine working surface on both sides of a central corridor. Induction cooking is the obvious choice here, not gas. In a fully electric concept of this ambition, gas is a philosophical mismatch. You would expect induction hobs, a combination oven with microwave and under-counter refrigeration, the kind of specification you associate with a high-end apartment kitchen, not a vehicle. The sleeping area. Position it at the rear, above the second axle zone. Here is why that matters. The rear of a long wheelbase vehicle like this is the quietest point in terms of road noise transmission. The front axle and engine bay are where noise and vibration originate. The rear is your acoustic refuge. A fixed island bed, meaning you can access it from both sides, would fit comfortably in this space. Based on the proportions, I would estimate 180 centimeters of bed length with 70 to 80 centimeters of either side access. That is a proper bed, not a compromise. The bathroom. This is where motorhome design either impresses you or deeply disappoints you, and I think this concept has the physical footprint to do something interesting. The raised roof section we discussed outside, that secondary tier, if it runs over the rear sleeping and bathroom zone, it creates additional vertical headroom precisely where you need it most, in a standing shower. A walk-in wet room at the rear of this concept is not a fantasy. The proportions support it. Proper wet room, not a folding door cubicle. That is the difference between feeling like you are living in a vehicle and feeling like you are living. The cockpit. Look at that windscreen geometry. It is deeply raked with a wide horizontal eye line. Driver visibility would be exceptional. The DLO, the daylight opening, the visible glass from outside, suggests a full-width dashboard with panoramic forward vision. In a concept at this level, you are looking at a fully digital instrument cluster, a large central infotainment display, and probably a secondary screen integrated into the passenger side for navigation monitoring. The steering wheel position and the overall cab architecture strongly suggest this concept imagines autonomous highway capability, the kind of system where you engage a route, and the vehicle handles the motorway leg while you walk back to the lounge. And here is the interior detail I told you I was saving. Look again at the side entry steps and the door proportions. That entry door is wide. Unusually wide for a motorhome, it looks close to 900 millimeters in the image. A door that wide in a living vehicle is not a practical necessity. It is a statement about how entry should feel. Walking into this concept should feel like entering a space, not squeezing through an opening. That single-dimensional decision, making the door generous rather than merely functional, tells you everything about the design philosophy at work here. Let's talk about what would actually power something like this, if someone were ever brave enough to engineer it for reality. Full electric is the only propulsion system that makes sense at this design positioning. The front face is already telling you that with its blue LED language. But let's be specific about what full electric means at this vehicle weight class. A coach of this size and mass, we are probably talking 15,000 to 18,000 kilograms fully loaded, requires serious battery capacity to achieve meaningful range. The closest real-world reference points are heavy electric coach platforms from BYD and Volvo, which are deploying 400 to 600 kilowatt-hour battery packs to achieve 300 to 400 kilometers of range per charge. In a near-future production scenario for a concept like this, you would need to be in that 500 kilowatt-hour territory minimum to make the range anxiety conversation go away for the kind of person who buys a vehicle at this level. That solar roof we discussed, the raised secondary tier. Let's be realistic about what it can and cannot do. At the surface area visible in this image, a high-efficiency solar array integrated into that roof section might generate 3 to 5 kilowatts in optimal conditions. That is not going to drive you anywhere. What it does do is sustain interior systems, climate control, lighting, appliances, connectivity, when the vehicle is stationary for extended periods. Off-grid capability. The difference between needing hookup at every stop and being able to park somewhere beautiful for 3 days without touching a power connection. Dual motor, dual axle. The 6-wheel configuration we see here almost certainly maps to independent motors at each driven axle. What that means practically: torque vectoring capability, active stability management across all driven wheels, and the ability to handle surfaces that a single rear-drive configuration would struggle with. This is not an off-road vehicle, but it is a vehicle that could handle a gravel road to a private estate without drama. Smart systems. In a concept at this ambition level, you are imagining a climate system that learns your preferences over time, knows you sleep at 19 degrees, knows you want the lounge at 21 degrees when you wake up. Predictive route planning that preconditions the battery for mountain climbs or charges aggressively ahead of remote stretches. Connectivity architecture that treats the vehicle as a mobile office as fluently as it treats it as a home. The technology to make all of this work largely exists today. Not all in one vehicle at this scale, but in components in adjacent industries in aviation and superyacht design. This concept is not science fiction. It is 5 to 10 years ahead of what is commercially available, which is exactly the right distance for a design concept to sit. Alright, here is my honest take. What this concept does genuinely well is the front-to-side design transition. Most motorhome concepts either commit to aggressive and look ridiculous parked outside a vineyard, or they commit to refined and end up looking anonymous. This design pulls off the transition between those two registers better than almost anything I have analyzed at this scale. The front earns your attention. The body holds your respect. That is hard to achieve, and they achieved it. What seems impractical, and I want to be specific here, is the window strategy on the living side. 3 fixed, deeply tinted windows sounds luxurious until you think about what it means to actually live in that space during a gray day in Northern Europe or a rainy afternoon in the mountains. Fixed glass with heavy tinting is a thermal management solution that comes at the cost of natural light variation. I would want at least one operable panel in that living zone, something that lets air and light in on your terms. A concept this resolve should not make you feel sealed in. The most impressive single detail: the entry door width. I keep coming back to it. It is the kind of dimensional decision that does not show up in specification sheets but completely changes how a space feels to occupy. Whoever made that call understood that luxury is experienced in the first 3 seconds of arrival. The door is where arrival happens. One thing I would change. The wheel arch treatment at the rear axle feels unresolved compared to the sophistication everywhere else. The arches look like they were taken from a commercial truck platform and grafted onto a luxury skin. For a concept this considered everywhere else, that discontinuity bothers me. I would want to see those rear arches integrated more fully into the lower body language. Pulled in, sculpted, given the same attention as the front face. What this concept signals about the future of luxury mobility is genuinely interesting. The direction it points is toward convergence. Motorhomes that stop apologizing for being motorhomes and start positioning themselves against private aviation and superyacht ownership as a legitimate alternative lifestyle. Not a budget version of those things. A competitor to them. That is a real market shift that is happening right now, and this concept is sitting exactly at that intersection. It is a concept. It is fictional. It is AI-generated. And it is still one of the most resolved motorhome concepts I have analyzed in terms of its overall design ambition. One question before you go, and I want your actual opinion on this. Solar roof for off-grid independence? Or would you rather that space go to a larger integrated battery pack for pure range? Drop your answer below. I read every single one. If this kind of detailed design analysis is what you come to YouTube for, subscribing is simply the most efficient way to make sure you do not miss the next one. New concept drops weekly.